We want to welcome you to Empowering Pastors. Thank you for being here today. We want to welcome all of our interns as well. We're blessed to have the interns here. You are young leaders being matured and developed into becoming great leaders, not only in the church, but in your families, also in businesses. Some of you are going to start your own companies, and some of you are going to be part of companies, and some of you are going to be in ministry. And in any factor, you want to make sure that you're leading properly. So we've been covering John Maxwell's study on the 5 levels of leadership. This is not something new to our church. This is not something new to our teams. It's kind of repetitive, and I know at times our team gets a little irritated because I do repetition, but this is one of the foundational principles that we can never, ever, ever lose. Because when a group of people start leading in diverse manners, then you will end up having a lot of controversy and a lot of collision within styles. So what we have done is at His Tabernacle Family Church, and what we teach with Empowering Pastors is, this is the foundational teaching that we give to all of our leaders so that we all lead the same way. Because if you're not going to lead the same way, well, then you're trying to paint the arches blue. You're never allowed to come into an organization and do things your way. This is not McDonald's. And I found that over the years. Many people like to come in and just do their own little creation within an organization. Well, I'm sorry. There is in every organization a culture. There is within every organization a style of leadership. And it is the job and responsibility of the leaders to make sure that you understand that. But also, as a leader within the organization, you must adapt and adopt it. Because other than that, you're trying to run your own little organization within the organization. And that only brings destruction. It never brings unity, and it never brings health. So we've talked about this, and I just want to go through real quickly. Level 1 is called positional leadership. Everybody say positional. And I believe you'll see them up on the screens. Positional leadership is one to where you've been given a responsibility and your influence only goes as far as your title. Everybody initially is a positional leader. But then what happens as you start dealing with people and building relationships with people is you then go from positional and you go to permission, where the people you're now leading are now trusting you, and they're starting to give you permission to be in their life. They're giving you permission to lead them. Listen, if you do not have permission in someone's life to lead them, then literally all you're doing is you're becoming a dictator in their life and someone that gives them the do's and the don'ts that they have to accomplish. That is not ultimately the greatest way to lead. The greatest way to lead is to have permission in someone's life. That means they trust you. They know you care about them. They know that you are going to work alongside of them. You're not going to sit there with a whip and start pushing them around, start barking at them all over the place. But you're going to be a person that they can trust and will run the race together. A true leader who has permission is someone who's going to lead, not drive. It's someone who's going to walk beside, not above. It's someone who is going to give and impart and put their hand to the plow with, rather than just sit back and say, that's your job, you do it. So our goal is, even though you have an initial position, your goal is to build relationships. Now, the majority of people in this room right now, I'm not sure about those that are watching online, but the majority of my team are millennials and Z generation. They demand relationship. They demand that intercommunication, where it's not just a dictator, it's not level 1. If you don't ever get to level 2 with the people that are the millennials, now I want to remind you, the millennial generation now starts at 42 years old. So we're now talking moms and dads. We're now talking people that are mainly the breadwinners and mainly the people that drive our community. They are the voters. They are the people that literally you see in as CEOs and you see as pastors these days. So this principle is something that you cannot try to skirt around. You have to be around people. It used to be in the old days when you were a leader, it was a higher echelon, which meant simply you are up here, they're down there. We actually saw that in the time of Constantine, and that was the big change in the church world. In the big church world, when you notice with Jesus, where was Jesus? He was always with his disciples. For all those years, the 3 years that he served on the planet in ministry, I'm talking his ministry experience, he spent time with his disciples every single day. We do see there were times that he would go away to a secret place and pray, but the majority of his time was with relationship. And then you notice that in that relationship, he built something with them that he was able to build upon. When you are a dictator, and what I was talking about with Constantine, what ended up happening after Constantine was like 300 and 320 AD. When Constantine came in, he created what was called the papacy and the pew. The papacy, which would be the pope and the priests, and the people who were in the congregation, they didn't talk to, they didn't spend time with. In fact, they would make the declaration, it was really strong, especially in the Dark Ages, where they would tell the people, you're not smart enough, the church pastors would say, you're not smart enough to understand the Bible, you shouldn't even have one, you should never read your Bible, you should only listen to us. And it created a chasm to where it was more dictatorial and it was more territorial and it was more oppressive than it was running the race like Jesus created it to be. You know, everybody is a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I said everybody is a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And in that, in this room, we have people that are pastors, and we have people that are department heads. We have people that are group leaders. And in every one of those positions, that's the position, until you cross over into permission, then people aren't really going to listen to you. They don't really care what you say. It's not that you have the right to speak at them. You notice I didn't speak to them. I said speak at them. You know, that's where you start building relationships. And I've had people say to me, well, I don't like people. Well, then simply you actually need to get your heart healed, number one. And number two, you need to get the heart of Jesus. Because the heart of Jesus is he loves people. So in all leadership, number one is position. Number two is permission. Number three is when we start getting into production. And production is when you start seeing it start to duplicate itself. Now, a lot of people want production, but they don't want relationships. They want production, but they don't want to develop relationships in people. And that doesn't work. If you don't have permission in someone's life, you are not going to have the production that you desire. You can drive people, and they will do it because they don't want to lose their job. You can drive people, and they'll do it because they don't want the company to fold. But honestly, you can tell whether you have permission in their life or not, because if you need extra work, they're gonna throw their hand to the plow, and they're gonna stay extra hours, not because you're demanding it to them, but because they believe in you and what you're doing. If you never get to that level, then you're never truly going to produce. If enthusiasm is not high, if you don't have a high morale within the organization, well, then you are not going to have production. People aren't going to do what you're asking them to do. Now, as a boss, when people start actually believing in the vision and you now have permission in their life, their desire is that you are going to, as it is them as well, that you're going to see the results that you're after. And ultimately, what you're stopping when you are now having a relationship, you are stopping what we call the back door. What is the back door? The back door is a rotation when all of a sudden you have people just in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. People that are moving in and out, don't have a relationship. It used to be in the old days, when you would start a job and work for a company, that many of the people in the older days would work literally their entire life with the same company. nowadays, because people aren't relational, now it's simply produce because I'm telling you to produce, because you're going to get a paycheck. The moment they get another offer that's more money, they're gone. And that right there is showing that your level of production is truly never going to reach the capacity it could have been, because until people believe in actually the vision, until people actually believe in what you're producing, they're not going to throw their hand in all the way. They're always going to have a little ear to the floor saying, when is somebody going to give me a better offer? So the desire is to create momentum through relationship and then believing in you. And this is what makes the exciting part of the journey. Now, production is interesting because it gets into also what we call plateaus. Plateaus are when, usually the first 5 years of ministry and the first 5 years of business, there's usually a strong upswing. But then because your upswing starts to slow down, you'll end up what we call plateauing. And then you have to make some decisions. And we actually were doing that in staff meeting today, where we started talking about what are we going to do differently to get a different result. We've tried many things in production, and we've tried them, and some have worked for periods of time, and then some have ceased. So you have to go back with your team who believe in the vision, because now they have your heart. They have the heartbeat of the vision. They have the heartbeat of the design. They have the heartbeat of the company. Ultimately, what you're striving to do then is bring another level of production as you get off that plateau. But that's not going to happen if the people don't believe in what you're doing. So production is very important. This is the next one that I believe Pastor Cody covered last week, and that is people development. This is the way you stay off the plateau. All of our interns that are in this room right now, you're in this room because not because we need to have an intern program, but because we're believing God that you as interns are going to be identified as next level leaders, and we're going to start dumping love into you, dumping training into you. We're going to start building you and strengthening you so you will be the next leaders, not only in the kingdom of God, but in the kingdom of God in the world. So people development is something that is consistent and constant, can never stop. You know, I'm very excited. One of the great successes of His Tabernacle Family Church and the leadership that we have here is my wife and I were 23 years ago, were the main leaders here. Our son, Cody, oh my goodness, how old Cody was in 1998, you were 8 years old. He wasn't a leader. He was 8 years old. His brother, Chad, was 7 years old. And Sister Corinne, 25 years old. Excuse me, no, she's 25 now. She was, how old was she? She was 4 years old, 3 years old. She was 3 years old. So they weren't leaders. But what we tried to do was, and what we did do, is we started looking at the people coming into the ministry, and we started identifying their skill sets. We started identifying their leadership capabilities. And everybody is called to lead. Turn to someone and say, I'm called to lead. You might not be called to lead a lot of people, but everybody in this room is called to lead. God developed you, made you to be a leader. I always said it this way to my children, you'll be a leader or I'll beat it into you. And because leadership was not a choice not to be. Everyone is called to lead. You might lead few people, you might lead departments, you might lead entire companies, but everybody is called to lead. But everybody must know that the only way to perpetuate and keep something flowing into success generationally, turn to someone and say, we are generational leaders. That's right, you're not just leaders, you are leaders of generations, and that is to people develop. You must identify and develop people. In fact, if you look at the fivefold ministry gifts of in the book of Ephesians, it says it is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, bring them to unity, and bring them to maturity. So the job of every pastor is people development. I'll say that again. The job of every fivefold minister, the apostle, the prophet, the pastor, teacher, and evangelist, is all the same job, and that is people development. So if you die and the ministry dies with you, or you die and the company dies with you, you are the ultimate failure. Where there is no successor, then you have ultimately failed. You must be able to produce successors, but that only comes as you develop people. Success without a successor is true failure. And so as this church has grown, you saw levels of leaders start to develop. We brought in different pastors, and we raised up different leaders from within the house. And now we're on our third tier of leaders, where my sons are now pastors in churches. Young people in this room that probably were just barely born, Jillian. Actually, you were born here. Is that correct? You were born here. Jesus, I'm getting old. Hallelujah. They will be leaders in the future. Who here was born before or after 1998? Wow. Yeah. But what I love about the fact that you're in this room is we're developing you because we know that God wants to raise you up to be great leaders. Whether it is in the ministry, whether it is in the secular world, to raise you to be great leaders. And so that's why even we do an internship. It is people development. And our goal is, I remember when Alan first came here, he was somewhat of a mess. Yep, Alan was somewhat of a mess. Now Alan is a great leader. And we love Alan. We can trust Alan. And we know if we put Alan to a task, he's going to get it accomplished. And that right there, that young man has developed, and that is what we do. You see, and each step of this, you're finding that you're creating not just an organization that's generational, but you're creating a legacy. You're creating something that will perpetuate well beyond your years. For if the vision you have dies with you, then you never genuinely had vision. And if it dies with you, then you are a very lax and not a very good leader to develop successors. So you must develop people. We develop people in a multiplicity type of ways. Number one, we go through this. You're in a room right now, and we're teaching you something. Some of you have heard it before, but that's okay. Why? Because you've forgotten more than you've learned. So here you are. We're training you. We're training you in a class. And it is, and prayerfully, something will stimulate you. Prayerfully, something will jump out at you. Prayerfully, you'll identify your weaknesses in some type of seminar like you're experiencing right now. Now, when I do this seminar in the secular world or in churches, I charge no less than $1,000 plus all my expenses. So if I go into a church, I'm charging this amount of money, if not more, to be able to go through the same training that you're getting in this room for free and that you're acquiring right now on YouTube. I do this because I believe in developing people. I believe that my greatest asset is not me. The greatest asset are the people that you're raising up under you, who then will literally walk on your ceiling. Your ceiling will be their floor. They must be able to be propelled beyond you. So it's not just that you're in a class like this, but you need to read books. Everybody in this room needs to listen or read leadership books. Why is that? Well, I'll do that when I get out of high school. No, you need to do that now so you can be a leader in college. Amen. So you don't have to, listen, if you do this stuff now, you'll be so far advanced that you'll probably be 5 to 7 years advanced of people coming into companies. A lot of people, and usually we're graced with the presence of Mr. Fuchsman. Mr. Fuchsman is a very, very, very successful businessman. He plays it down all the time, but he has created companies that multi-million-dollar corporations. And one of the things that you'll hear him constantly say when he's in this room is, young people, what you're hearing now, if I heard that 40 years before, I would have been even more successful. Don't wait to learn leadership skills and capabilities when you need them. Learn them before by reading books, going to seminars, and allowing yourself to be stretched by those that are over you. Their job is to make you, develop you into great leaders. And if you are never uncomfortable, then you are never being stretched. You must be stretched. You must become uncomfortable. I am personally uncomfortable pretty much in every single time I sit with my staff, truthfully. I just don't think like my staff. I'm older. When I sit with my staff, and even the one we were just in, I told them, you have to send me these, write these things down, because it's not how I think. I need you to write them and send them to me so I don't forget them. And I do that because I'm uncomfortable sitting with these people. I'm telling them this now. I'm really uncomfortable a lot of times sitting with my staff because it's like I feel so out of touch. But what they're doing to me, they don't know this, they're developing me even as I'm developing them. That's called team. And that comes as you are growing. You can never stop growing in your leadership skill sets. Hear me now. Leadership is a skill. Has anybody ever played an instrument? If you played it, you tried. If you played an instrument, the very first time, let's just say you picked up a saxophone or you started playing a piano or you started playing a guitar, you probably heard more wrong notes than you heard right notes. How many here sing? How many here ever took a lesson? Buddy, you sing? How many of you ever took lessons? Minister Mackenzie gives lessons. If you need lessons, she will have no problem. Her company is available, and she does music lessons, and that's also instruments as well as singing. And she'll help you. Why? Because she's a good coach. She's a good trainer. She'll stretch you. But man, if you get in there, you're going to have to start doing your scales. And you're going to realize real quick, you might need some help with your scales. But through development of your scales, whether it be on a musical instrument or through your voice, you're going to become somebody that somebody's going to want to listen to. Follow me now. If you are just a leader, but you never develop your scales, probably no one's going to want to listen to you. So learn your scales in leadership. There's a Pinnacle place, and it's level 5. And this is something you just don't get to over 5 or 10 years. This is really what you should be aspiring for. You've heard me say another 1,000 times, it's not just how you start, it's how you finish. Most people do not finish well. Can I say something to this generation? When you leave your job, it should take 2 people to replace you. Your boss, when you resign, should beg you to stay. If they do not, then you were not a good employee. I'll even go a step further. You are not a good example of Jesus Christ. It should take people, more than one, to replace you from your job. Now, the fact is that you're trying to create a legacy, or you're trying to create a continuity of flow of lifestyle that people are going to want to be around. So the 5th level is called personhood. Your followers are loyal and sacrificial. Why are they loyal and sacrificial? Because they believe in you. They're not just part of a company. They're not just part of a ministry. They're not just sitting in a pew. They're loyal to you and loyal to the vision. Loyalty is something that is far lost in today's society. People are more loyal to things than they are to people. And we've got to change that back. We need to be loyal to people. I've had many people that say they were my friends turn on me. Many. More than I want to count on one hand, 1 foot, and 2 nose hairs. It's just not going to happen. There are just so many people that have said they're with you. In fact, usually if somebody walks up to me at church and says, I'm a lifer, Pastor, I'm never leaving, this is the place I'm going to be forever, I'm now counting the days until they leave. I've always found that the people are loyal when they're getting something from you. But personhood is not when they're loyal because they're getting something from you. They're loyal because they actually know that you're genuine, real, and you're consistent. People are willing to sacrifice for something that they have confidence in. If people don't have confidence in you as a leader, you are going nowhere. It goes all the way back to personhood. But when you start to deal with, that goes all the way back to permission. But when you're talking personhood, we're talking decades of provable lifestyle. Personhood is when someone can look back at your life over decades and say, they have been consistent. The one thing you'll find about me is I am consistent. You might not like me, but I am consistent. You might not always agree with me, but I am consistent. I'm not vacillating, changing 16 times to make everybody happy. My personhood, my mindset, my principles, I do not leave. And then people can put confidence in that even though they don't like it, they know they can trust it. Trust is ultimately what you're striving for at the end game of your life. Can you imagine at the end of your life, everybody abandons you? We've been studying in Bible college, Remnant Bible College. We've been going through what's called charismatic history. We went through a man named John Alexander Dowie. What a great man of God. And many of the Voice of Healing ministers actually, their lives were transformed by this man called John Alexander Dowie, who was born in Scotland and then moved to Australia and then ended up going to Illinois. And then he started literally his own city called the City of Zion, just outside of Illinois, that today, it was a Christian city. It literally started 10,000 citizens within 2 years. Every street was named Christian except for 1 or 2. And to even be part of the city, you had to be born again. This man had a great reputation. But at the end of his life, he thought he was Elijah the prophet. He ended up dying alone, and his own family abandoned him. I don't want to die alone, and I don't want to start something that no one wants to be part of. I don't want to die and look back on my life and have regret thinking that I did all of that for naught. Your character is everything. Can people trust your character? They might not like all of your character. They might not agree with you completely. I love my sons, but I'm sure my sons, there are many places my sons don't agree with me. I'm okay with that. But they know this. I'm constant, I'm consistent, and they're loyal, not because they're my sons, but because I am consistent and constant. Our goal is to take many years and develop leaders, mold them, make them. I was sitting in my office yesterday as the parks program, people were getting ready to leave, and down the hallway came a young lady named Minister Mackenzie. And made a statement. And what was that statement? She said, well, as Pastor Spencer would say, we're going to go hug some folks' neck. She didn't know I was in the room. I'm laughing because that's exactly what I would say. Let's go hug some folks' neck. Well, why would I say? Why would she say? How many times has she heard that to be able to remember that? Consistency. Molding and mentoring leaders. I remember we had our newspaper come in, the local news crew came in one day to do interviews. It was very interesting. It was a Sunday morning, and we have a statement that says this: we don't care where you've come from, we don't care where you've been, we care where you're going. And then the news person came up to me afterwards and said, what have you done? I had 3 people tell me the exact same thing. We don't care where you've come from, we don't care what you've done, we care where you're going. And I said, they're parroting the principles. That is because they were developed and trained and matured. That is what a person of personhood will do. They'll create generations, not generation of young men and young women that will be able to lead in a continuity and a flow of truly loving people. And they themselves developing leaders within them. So that as that man or that woman dies, you will not need to have a headstone set aside for them. They will still be remembered without a place to visit in a graveyard. If you need a graveyard for people to remember you, then you've not created personhood. You should be remembered. And the way you are remembered is generations of men and women you have trained that will actually parrot the principles that brought success to you. The greatest joy comes from watching others grow and develop. You rise above the organization, you walk amongst them, and this is an important one. There does come a time, especially when you're starting your organization and you're fresh and you're a new leader, that you're walking amongst the people. The reason you're walking amongst them is you're building relationships, permission. At some point in time, you're going to start walking in front of them because they're going to need someone to lead them quicker. And then you're going to walk above them. That doesn't mean you're better than them. That means now you're mainly training the leaders, and the leaders are now training the next level leaders. Generations. Truly success is when you die, you're still respected. Out of many of the Voice of Healing ministers, their last story was not a good story. Their last leg of their life didn't leave them with respect and honor. But the ones that did, it resounds. Become a person that doesn't aim at what's in front of you. Become a leader that's going to aim for the end of your life. So that when you die, young and or old, you'll still be respected, honored, appreciated. Here it is, and remembered. When you're not remembered, you've not reached. And if you've never trained and developed leaders, you can't be remembered. Because who is there to remember you? You. Oh, that's right, you're dead. Develop leaders. So we, and I pray thee, that was a good King James Version, wasn't it? We'll take this 5 levels of leadership that John Maxwell developed, and apply them at every level of leadership structure within your church. Don't ever allow someone to paint the arches blue. A main part of leading is not only people liking you, but you being able to correct them. I never tolerate someone painting the arches blue. I've done it in the past. I've tolerated it. And the mess is so horrific once they leave that I'm here to convince you. If they're not leading by the 5 levels of leadership, pull them from leadership. It is going to save you pain. If they are leading by the 5 levels of leadership, then you know this, that they are going to be people that are going to be able to parrot, demonstrate, and show the true love and they themselves end their life with personhood. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you taking the time. I'm sorry, we do have a question. Go ahead.
So within leadership and on like teams, I assume it's like very natural that there always are going to be people on teams that don't always 100% like agree with the vision or 100% sold out.
The question is, when you have teams and you're developing leaders, we just don't have a microphone for you, so I have to repeat for them to hear me online. Is there always going to be somebody within your team that does not believe wholly in the vision? Is that the question?
Yeah, or people that are just like...
Or people that are disgruntled. I'll just say it this way. You'll never get a better leader than Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And he had a Judas. You will always have a Judas. You will always have somebody on your team that's ready and willing to cut your throat. They might be passive about it. They might be quiet about it until they see their opportunity. I'm not being cynical. If Jesus, the greatest leader that ever walked on the planet, had a Judas, so will you. And they're never a Judas if they're not close. They're never a Judas if it doesn't hurt. So the issue is not that. The issue is, can you lead through your pain? Because pain is part of leadership. It is a normal part of leadership. Questions? Yes. How do you deal with Judas? It depends, and that is a very loaded question. That would take me an entire 30 minutes to deal with. Dealing with your Judas goes from the extremes of immediate extraction to slow extraction to you didn't see it coming and now you're laying on the floor all bloody. There are so many different extremes. That's a great topic. Maybe we can cover that here in the next few weeks. Would anybody be interested in hearing that one? How to deal with a Judas. Very good. We'll deal with that in 2 weeks. Is that fair? Very good. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate you watching. I ask that if you get an opportunity, go to our website, empoweringpastors.com, or go to our YouTube and or our Facebook. We know that we can help build, strengthen you and your leadership team, whether it be ministry or whether it be secular. We want to be able to be a blessing to you with God's principles of great success. Have a great day.